What the city took from US. The first time I touched him, the city was on fire. Not literally, though later, when the news ran the footage, people would say it felt that way. Sirens echoing off glass towers, protesters flooding the streets, police lights slicing the dark into frantic blue and red. But when my fingers brushed his wrist, when his skin met mine like a spark catching dry air, the noise vanished. I knew his name before he told me. That was the first sin. The second was staying. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, eyes scanning the crowd. "This side of the barricade isn't safe." I smiled because fear had always made me reckless. "Neither is yours." He hesitated, just a beat too long, and in that pause something irreversible happened. His hand closed around mine, not tight, not loose, like he was testing whether I'd disappear if he held on too hard. "I'm Julian," he said. I didn't tell him my last name, he didn't ask. We ran together when the tear gas rolled in, breathless and laughing like children who didn't understand the cost of joy yet. Down an alley that smelled like rain and rust, past a shuttered cafe with a cracked chalkboard still advertising happy hour, as if happiness was something that could be scheduled. When we stopped, we were pressed against the brick wall, chests heaving inches apart. "You don't even know who I am," he said. I looked at his mouth when he spoke. "I know enough." That was the third sin. And the worst. The city had lines you weren't supposed to cross. Neighborhoods that warned you with their silence, buildings that hummed with secrets, people whose names opened doors or slammed them shut. Julian crossed every line without seeming to notice. He lived in the upper floors of a building I'd only ever passed in shadow. Glass, steel, guarded entrances. The kind of place where elevators moved silently and the air smelled expensive. I found out who he was the next morning. His face stared back at me from my phone screen while I sat on my bed, still wearing his shirt, my body aching in the sweetest way. Julian Hale, Deputy Director of Internal Affairs. The man responsible for investigating corruption. The man my brother had testified against before he disappeared. My stomach turned cold. I should have left, burned the bridge before it could burn me. Instead, I remembered the way Julian had said my name in the dark, like it mattered, like it was something fragile he was afraid to break. I told myself I would end it. I didn't. Forbidden love doesn't announce itself with drama. It creeps in. It shows up in coffee cups left on counters, in text messages sent too late at night, in glances held too long across rooms where other people pretend not to notice. We met in places where neither of us belonged. A bookstore tucked between a tattoo parlor and a payday loan office. A diner where the waitress knew my order and eyed Julian like he was an alien life form. "You're going to get recognized," I whispered once. He shrugged, "Let them look." "You don't care." "I care about you," he said. "That's the problem." He learned my silences. I learned the way his jaw tightened when he lied, to himself mostly. We avoided talking about work, about my brother, about the invisible line between us that grew darker every day. When he kissed me, it wasn't desperate. It was reverent. Like he knew this was temporary and wanted to remember every second. That scared me more than anything. The city started closing in. Rumors moved faster than truth. A leaked report, a reopened case. My brother's name surfacing again like a body that refused to stay buried. Julian came to my apartment one night, rain-soaked and pale. "They're reopening everything," he said, "including your brother's testimony." I felt the room tilt. "You're involved." "Yes." "Are you investigating him?" I whispered, "or protecting the people who ruined him?" He flinched. That was answer enough. "You can't be with me," I said, "not like this." "I don't know how to stop," he said, his voice broke. "I don't know how to choose right anymore." I pressed my forehead to his chest, feeling his heart slam like it was trying to escape. "Then don't," I said, "just choose me tonight." He did. God help us, he did. Love is not always gentle. Sometimes it's hands shaking as they undress you, mouths bruising skin because restraint has run out. Sometimes it's whispered apologies tangled with pleas for more. Julian loved me like he was running out of time. Like every kiss might be the last. Afterward, tangled in sheets that smelled like us, he traced the scar on my shoulder, the one I'd never explained. "Tell me the truth," he said, "about your brother." I told him everything. How the city had chewed him up and spit him out. How the night he vanished, I'd seen a black sedan idle outside our building. How justice had felt like a word people used to sleep better. Julian didn't speak for a long time. When he did, it was barely audible. "I think I know who did it." My heart stopped. And if I expose them," he said, "it will destroy my career." I sat up, "And if you do?" "It destroys you." The room filled with a terrible, sacred quiet. "I won't ask you to choose," I said. He met my eyes. "You already have." The final weeks felt borrowed. We moved through the city like ghosts, memorizing each other. The way his laugh surprised him. The way I counted steps when I was nervous. The way silence between us no longer felt empty. Then the story broke. Names, evidence, arrests. Julian stood at the center of it all, praised by some, condemned by others. And then the backlash came. Threats, smear campaigns, a warning slipped under my door. "Leave HIM or lose everything." Julian held the paper with hands that didn't shake. "They'll come after you," he said. "They already have." He pulled me into his arms, crushing me to him like he could shield me from the world with his body alone. "I can't lose you," he said. "You might," I said softly. "That's the cost of doing the right thing." He kissed my forehead. I'd pay it again. The night he testified, the city held its breath. I watched from the back of the room, unnoticed. When our eyes met, something passed between us, gratitude, grief, love sharp enough to hurt. When it was over, he didn't look at me again. That was how I knew he was protecting me. Weeks passed, then months. The city moved on, as it always does. One afternoon, a letter arrived, no return address. "I did what I could. I hope you're free now. Jay." I folded it carefully and placed it in the book we'd first argued over in that dusty bookstore. Outside, the city roared. Inside, I smiled through tears. Because some loves are not meant to last. They are meant to change you. To burn away the lie that safety matters more than truth. To remind you that even in a city that takes everything, love still chooses us. Part I, the things that do heal. The city didn't punish Julian loudly. It punished him slowly. His resignation came disguised as a mutual decision. His name disappeared from panels, then from articles, then from conversations altogether. People who once shook his hand crossed streets to avoid him. Heroes are only useful while they're obedient. I learned this from a distance. I moved apartments, changed jobs, learned how to breathe without expecting his shadow beside me. Some mornings were easier, most were not. Then one night at 2:17 a.m. my phone rang. Unknown numbers. I almost didn't answer. Lena, his voice said, rough, thinner than I remembered. "I'm sorry to call so late." My knees gave out. I slid down the wall, heart breaking open all over again. "I thought you weren't going to contact me," I whispered. "I wasn't," he said, "but I don't have anyone else." That should have scared me. It didn't. Julian was sick. Not the kind you recover from with time and rest. Not the kind that comes with hope attached. Stress, exhaustion, years of living in a body that never learned how to stop fighting. It had finally taken its due. "I didn't want you to know," he said as we sat in the hospital room, his skin too pale against white sheets. "I wanted you to remember me whole." I took his hand. It felt smaller, lighter. "You don't get to choose how I remember you," I said. "You never did." He smiled weakly, still stubborn. "Still running," I said. His smile faded. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Not of dying, of leaving things unfinished." I leaned forward, forehead to his, then let me stay. He closed his eyes. For the first time since I'd known him, Julian Hale cried. We stole time the way desperate people do. Hospital nights when the machines hummed like distant oceans. Early mornings when sunlight caught the dust in his small apartment, turning everything golden for a few quiet minutes. I cooked meals he barely touched. He told stories he'd never shared, about the first time he'd bent the rules, the last time he'd spoken to his father, the moment he realized power was a trap dressed as success. "I loved you wrong," he said once. "I should have fought harder to keep you." "You fought when it mattered," I said. "You chose truth." He looked at me like that was both comfort and curse. "I chose you," he said softly, just not loudly enough. The night he collapsed, it was raining. Hard, relentless, like the city was trying to wash itself clean. I rode in the ambulance holding his hand, begging him to stay awake, to look at me, to say my name again like it anchored him. "Lena," he whispered, barely audible, "promise me something. Anything. Don't let this be the thing that breaks you." Tears blurred my vision. "You don't get to ask that." He smiled faintly. "You always were stronger than me." The doors slammed shut. I watched them pull him away. That was the last time I saw Julian alive. Grief is not dramatic. It's quiet. It's reaching for a phone that will never light up again. It's saving a seat without realizing it. It's hearing his laugh in strangers' voices and turning too quickly. The funeral was small, carefully controlled. No speeches about heroism, no apologies from the city that chewed him up and called it justice. I stood in the back, unseen. When the service ended, I placed a folded letter in his coffin, the one I'd never given him. "You loved me in a world that punished you for it. I will carry that forever." Years later, people still argue about Julian Hale. Some say he was reckless, others say he was brave, most say nothing at all. I tell his story differently. I tell it in the way I refuse to look away from hard truths, in the way I choose love even when it costs me comfort, in the way I keep going, not because I healed, but because I learned how to live with the ache. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine him walking toward me through the city streets, whole again, smiling like he used to when he saw me first. In those moments, I let myself believe this, that some loves don't end. They transform. They become the quiet strength behind your choices. The reason you stand up when it would be easier not to. The proof that even if the city takes everything, it can never take who you loved, or who loving them made you. After the world ends, the city didn't know Julian was gone. It still hummed, still rushed, still swallowed people whole and spit them back out with new scars. His absence meant nothing to traffic lights or boardrooms or the buildings that reflected the sky like mirrors refusing to remember. But my body knew. Grief settled into me like a second skeleton. I carried it everywhere, on buses, in grocery store aisles, in the shower where I finally let myself sob because no one could hear me there. Some days I forgot for a few seconds. Then I remembered, and it felt like losing him all over again. I found his voicemail by accident. An old backup, a message I'd never opened because it was dated the night before his testimony. His voice filled the room, warm and steady, like he was still here. "Lena, I don't know if I'll send this. But if something happens, if I don't get to explain, please know this wasn't regret. Loving you was the bravest thing I ever did. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a safer love. I hope one day the city is kinder to you than it was to us." I collapsed onto the floor. I pressed the phone to my chest, like I could push him back into the world through sheer need. I replayed it until the sound of his voice felt dangerous, until loving him again felt like reopening a wound that never closed. Time passed the way it always does, without asking permission. I learned how to function, how to smile when required, how to answer "How are you?" with something that didn't make people uncomfortable. But love doesn't vanish just because someone dies. It lingers, in the way my body still leaned toward empty space, in the way I reached for his side of the bed in half sleep, in the way my chest tightened whenever I passed the hospital. I didn't move on. I moved around the griefs. On the anniversary of his death, I went back to the bookstore. The same dust, the same creaking floorboards, the same copy of the book we'd argued over, still sitting on the shelf like it had been waiting. I opened it. Inside was his handwriting. Not the letter I'd placed in his coffin. Another one. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye the right way. My hands shook. I know you, Lena. You'll blame yourself. You'll think if you'd loved me less, I might have lived longer. Don't do that. You were the only place I ever rested. Tears dripped onto the page. I need you to live, loudly, stubbornly, with your whole heart. Even if it never loves like this again. I pressed my forehead to the book and whispered his name like a prayer. People say love fades. They're wrong. It changes temperature, not intensity. Years later, when someone held my hand, I still felt Julian's absence in the space between our fingers. When someone kissed me, it never felt wrong, just unfinished. He had taken a part of me with him. Not the best part. The truest. The city eventually put up a plaque. A small one, tucked into a corner of a building no one lingered near. In honor of integrity. I stood there one evening, fingers brushing the cold metal, and laughed through tears. Integrity. They never said his name. So I said it out loud. I loved him, I told the empty street, and he loved me back, that mattered. The wind carried my words away. But I said them anyway. Some nights when sleep refuses to come, I imagine another version of us. One where the city didn't punish goodness. One where love wasn't collateral damage. One where he grows old and I get to be there to complain about it. In that version, we argue over nothing. We grow tired together, we survive. But this is the version I was given. And in this one, I loved fiercely, I lost deeply, and I didn't look away from the truth. If that is all I ever do right in this life, it will be enough. The price of remembering. The first threat came disguised as an apology. An email, no sender name, no signature. We regret what happened to Julian Hale. Some truths are better left undisturbed. For your own safety, let the past rest. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. They were afraid. Not of me. Of what Julian had left behind. I hadn't told anyone about the documents. The flash drive hidden inside the spine of the book. The one Julian had pressed into my hand weeks before he collapsed. Just in case, he'd said. I hadn't opened it. Grief had made me careful, fear made me braver. That night, I plugged it in. Files bloomed across the screen, sealed reports, falsified timelines, names redacted so aggressively they screamed guilt. Evidence tying powerful people to my brother's disappearance. And worse, proof Julian's illness hadn't been natural. My hands flew to my mouth. Medication altered, appointments delayed, warnings ignored. They hadn't killed him directly. They had weighted him to death. Sleep became impossible. Every sound outside my apartment felt like a warning. Every passing car slowed my heartbeat to a crawl. I started checking locks twice, then 3 times. Then I noticed the man across the street. Always there, always watching. The city hadn't finished with me. I went to the only person Julian had ever trusted halfway. Mara Quinn, investigative journalist, fired twice, sued once, unafraid always. She read the files in silence. When she looked up, her face had gone pale. This isn't just corruption, she said. This is systematic erasure. They killed him, I whispered. They let him die, she corrected, so their hands would look clean. Her gaze sharpened. If we publish this, they'll come after you. They already are. She nodded slowly, then we do it right. The story exploded. Headlines screamed, names resurfaced, lawsuits followed, the city pretended to be shocked. And then the retaliation came. My apartment door was forced open while I slept. Nothing stolen, everything touched. A message carved into my kitchen table. Stop. I sat on the floor afterward, shaking so hard I thought I might disappear. I'm doing this for you, I whispered to the empty room. Please tell me I'm not wrong. In the quiet, I almost heard Julian's voice. Truth costs something, you taught me that. Mara was followed. Sources went silent. The publisher backed out. The city closed ranks. Julian's name became controversial again, dragged through debates and think pieces and carefully worded denials. They tried to turn him into a question mark, I refused. At a public hearing meant to bury the scandal quietly, I stood up. "My name is Lena," I said into the microphone, hands shaking. "I loved Julian Hale, and he died telling the truth when no one else would." Gasps, whispers, cameras snapping. "He believed this city could be better, and you let him die for it." Silence fell like judgment. I didn't see the man standing until he leaned close and whispered, "You're making yourself a target." I met his eyes. I already was. That night, as I walked home under flickering streetlights, a car slowed beside me. The window rolled down. I ran. Footsteps thundered behind me. My lungs burned. My heart screamed Julian's name like it could summon him back. I tripped. Hands grabbed my coat. And then sirens. The car peeled away. I lay on the pavement sobbing, rain mixing with blood from my scraped palms, realization crashing through me. They would never stop. Unless I finished this. I went public again. Not carefully. Not politely. I released everything. Julian's files, my brother's testimony, medical records, messages, names. I burned every bridge and lit the rest on fire. The city erupted. Arrests followed, resignations, denials that fooled no one. And then quiet. Too quiet. The final message came on a handwritten note slipped under my door. "You won, but winning has consequences." I folded it slowly. Julian had known this. He walked into it anyway. I stood in the center of my apartment, heart breaking open all over again, not from grief this time, but from understanding. Love hadn't just cost him his life. It had made me brave enough to risk mine. On the night the last indictment was announced, I went to the river. The city lights shimmered on the water like broken stars. "I did it," I whispered. "I didn't stop." The wind answered softly. For the first time since his death, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness. Purpose. The last truth. The package arrived without postage. No return address. Just my name, written in Julian's handwriting. My hands went numb. Inside was a single envelope and an old audio recorder. I locked the door, sat on the floor, pressed play. Static crackled, then his voice, steady, calm, devastating. "Lena, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it. And if you've already gone public, I'm sorry for what it's about to cost you." My chest tightened. "There's something I never told you. Not because I didn't trust you, but because loving you made me want to protect you from what I was about to do." His confession unfolded slowly. Julian hadn't just uncovered corruption. He had engineered its exposure years in advance. He had planted evidence trails, forced rival factions to turn on each other, created a paper labyrinth so complex that once it began collapsing, it couldn't be stopped. And he had known what it would do to him. They couldn't kill me outright, too visible. So they chose patience. I counted on that. My hands shook violently. What I didn't count on was you. Falling in love made the cost real. Tears streamed down my face. Then came the final revelation. Your brother wasn't silenced. He was protected. I stopped breathing. I moved him, changed his name, buried him in paperwork so deep even I couldn't find him again without risking exposure. He's alive, Lena. He always was. A sob tore out of me. If I told you, they would have known. Grief was the only shield I could give you. I pressed my fist against my mouth, the sound of my heart breaking open echoing in the room. He had saved my brother by letting me believe he was gone. The envelope contained one final document, a sealed affidavit. Julian's signature. Names I recognized and one I didn't. Mine. He had listed me as a protected witness. If this affidavit was released, the final figure, the architect behind everything, would fall. But the protection would vanish. No more anonymity, no more hiding. I would become the last loose end. The last truth. Mara begged me not to do it. They'll destroy you, she said. Disappear, let this end. I looked at Julian's handwriting again, at the quiet courage carved into every letter. He knew, I said, and he did it anyway. She whispered, you could live. I nodded. I could survive, I corrected, but I wouldn't be living. The night before the release, I dreamed of Julian. He stood whole and smiling, city lights behind him. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I asked. For loving you enough to let you hate me. I woke up with tears soaking my pillow and clarity in my chest. The affidavit went live at dawn. Names fell like dominoes. One arrest, then another, then silence so heavy it felt like the city itself was holding its breath. I packed a single bag. Left the apartment keys on the counter. I didn't look back. They found me anyway. A week later, a quiet road, a car that didn't belong. I ran. A gunshot cracked the air. Pain exploded through my side. I collapsed, breath ripping from my lungs, blood warm against my skin. As the world blurred, one thought stayed clear. Julian, I understand now. I didn't die. I woke in a safe house with white walls and no windows. A doctor told me I was lucky. A man in a suit told me I was finished. Your name will disappear, he said. You won't contact anyone, you won't tell this story again. I nodded. That was the price. Years later, in a quiet coastal town where no one knows my name, I watched the ocean roll in and out like breathing. Sometimes I imagine Julian beside me. Sometimes I imagine my brother somewhere safe, living a life I'll never see. The city moved on, but history didn't. They teach Julian Hale's case now. They call it the turning point. They never mention me. And that's how I know he won. Love didn't save us. It exposed everything. It asked for blood, silence, sacrifice. And we paid. If I could do it again, knowing the cost, I wouldn't hesitate. Because some truths are worth dying for. And some loves are worth everything that comes after.